Hi guys, Rui here from Blender Bros. Welcome back, and in this video we're gonna be editing our renders. So grab them from the folder. You can just grab them with Shift, right, and then drag them to your Photoshop here and release. Okay, and then you're gonna have two layers open, right? So what we need to do is we need to drag this layer over the other layer. All right, so now grab this one, drag it, keep your mouse pressed, hold Shift, and then drop it. It's gonna drop exactly on top of it. Okay, so now when I'm gonna control click that, we're gonna have a perfect cutout. You see, that's why we needed this render. Okay, Control D to deselect it. Cool. So now we need to edit this, guys. So let's start. First of all, what we're gonna do, we're gonna adjust brightness and stuff, okay, and contrast. So let's go to Camera Raw Filter, and we're going to, our brightness is pretty decent, but we can pump it up a little bit more to make it really bright. We could drop highlights just a little bit. We could pump the clarity up and also open shadows, because clarity will pump shadows quite heavily. Okay, so we can do that. Right now, this is looking good. And then you could press Ctrl Z, Ctrl J, and Ctrl Alt F. What it will do, it will remove the effect from this layer. You copy the layer, so you duplicate it, and you reapply the latest filter, which is Camera Raw Filter. Okay, alternately, what you can do is Ctrl J to duplicate it, then run your filter and then apply it, but it's the same thing. So one more time, Ctrl Z, Ctrl J, and Ctrl Alt F. All right, so now we see that we have a bit of a more contrast. Everything is a bit more punchy. It's quite often I see kind of like a muddy renders. You really want to punch this thing up. Okay, you really want to make it come out of its shell. Okay, important. Right, now we're going to we're gonna add some filter. Okay, some filters. So let's go here and we're gonna add color lookup, which is great. Click here, click on the first one, then click again, click one more time, and then you can start scrolling through different effects. Okay, this one is really cool. What we could do is switch this to soft light, or maybe to just color, so it will affect the color but it will not affect our brightness. Or we could switch back to normal and sort of adjust the fill here, so make sure that it's not really that crazy. Okay, that looks pretty cool to me. You cannot remove this bluish tone in the background, but you could go with something like this. That's actually pretty cool. It's a little bit dark, so what we could do is double click here to enter this kind of a layer style setup, and under blend diff, what you can do is remove this effect, okay, this effect from underlying layer, which is this one, from a certain tones. So for example here, if I'm gonna remove this slider, I'll remove it from black tones. But you see that kind of the transition is a bit of a harsh transition, so what we can do is split it with Alt. So hold Alt and split them in two, and you're gonna be able to remove this effect, okay, from the darkest tones of the image, right? Which is which is interesting. So we could do that, and there you go. And then on top of this, we could add, for example, curves or levels. So we could go here to curves, and we could brighten this up a little bit more. Okay, so grab this hand, and we could click on this here and brighten it up a little bit, bring it up, and this we're going to add a little bit of a more of a punch to this image. That looks really cool. Now watch this. If you, for example, wanted to change color of your background, it's going to be very difficult to do it right now, but because we have a cutout, we can. So we could control click on this, create a new layer, and then create a mask. So add a mask. And then mask actually is black, which means it conceals the background but reveals the bot. We wanted the reverse, so press Ctrl I. And then what we could do is we could just run a color on this. Okay, so we could run a kind of like a bluish color here, right? And then Alt delete, right? And let's reduce the the intensity of it to kind of just slightly below. Okay, see, and you can really easily change the background of your image. You could remove it from the darkest tones, so you could remove it here to get back these shadows a little bit. So you just remove it from there, it's gonna look a bit more natural. So there you go. That looks pretty cool. It's a bit strong, so you could just, you know, remove it. Just a little bit of this kind of a bluish tone if you wanted to. You could change it to something else, right? You know, you could just keep changing it to whatever really you want. Okay, this actually looks pretty cool as well, kind of like a yellowish. Looks pretty awesome. So we could still remove it from the darkest tones here. A bit more. There you go. That's really cool. I really like it. It's pretty awesome. You could play with, for example, cross processing. You could go here to curves and go to blue tones, and add blue in you know, in shadows, and add yellow in highlights. So you could amplify this, kind of like a split tone effect. Okay, do something like this. See, so you can do a lot of stuff. That's actually really cool. Let's play with the red tones as well. So I can pump reds here in highlights and add some cyan in shadows. There we go. And I think I'm not gonna play with the green. I'm just gonna leave it like that. That's actually really cool. I really like this. This is beautiful. Let's save this as a PSD, right? Okay. So PSD and save it. Okay. Not PSD. PSB actually is for files over 2 GB, so you don't really need that. And that looks pretty cool. And now we can, for example, add some, you know, some logos. Now, a really easy way to do go about adding logos is have PNG files that are being cut out. So let's say I'm gonna be using stuff from our decal packs. So I'm gonna go to our Blender Bros decal pack and just drop the Brostech, you know, decal here. It's a PNG of a high resolution. You can put it in here. Then, if you wanted to match the color, you know, what you can do is control click on this, right, to select it. Go to curves, and when you click on curves, it's gonna automatically cut out this sign from the mask here. You can hide that underneath, and then when you're gonna go brighter or darker, you can actually add text that's gonna be corresponding with you know, the color theme of your background, because it sort of borrows the color from this yellow background. We could change color here. We could, for example, you know, delete that, hide it, enable this, add another layer here, hold Alt and clip it. So if you hover your mouse between the layers, you can clip it. And then you're gonna grab a brush and borrow color holding Alt from one of these, you know, these elements, and press delete, Alt delete, and it's gonna be the same color as on your bot, which is kind of cool, right? Then you can select all of them, right? Control G to add them to a group, and drop a fill on the whole group to make it a little bit less insane. So you see, you got the text with the same sort of a color, but it's a little bit less visible, so it's really cool, right? And you can do the same thing with other logos. So let's grab, for example, Oxful Kinetics, and, you know, drop a logo here, and we could drop it either here, or you could drop it on the bottom. This would actually look pretty cool here. Make it a little bit bigger maybe. So now here we're gonna create a new layer, and we're going to Alt delete, and we're gonna hold Alt and clip it. Gonna have the same effect. We can now move this inside of this group here, which should, there you go, which should basically change the opacity of this layer as well, right? The last thing what we could think about is press Shift, Control, Alt, and E to create this kind of a stamp layer. And so it's gonna basically grab all these layers and create one layer on top. So it's the same thing. And we can go to filter and go to camera raw, right? And we can add some vignette. I mean, in this case, I don't think it's necessary, but if you want to, vignettes are really nice to sort of like, you know, closing the image. We could actually add a white vignette, maybe. No, I think darker is gonna be better. So kind of like a bit of a vignette here, you know, and you could just change the roundness here and sort of feather it in, right? And maybe adjust the highlights and boom. And this would be our, you know, our image. If you wanted to bring it further, you could go to again to camera raw, right? And you could, for example, increase texture details. So go here to basic, and you know, increase the texture. Sort of, it's like it pops. Yeah, make it pop. But what you want to do is you want to remove the effect from the background. So again, go here and control click on this on this cutout, add the mask, and now it's fine. So it's gonna add this texture to the bot, but not to the background. So it's gonna make it pop even more, which is really cool, right? Shift Alt Control E, and then we're gonna go back to camera raw, and I wanna make sure is that my black tones are not too dark. You never wanna clip tones, which means that, look at the histogram here, okay? Left side is blacks, right side is bright. So if I'm going to clip something, right, like this, when I'm gonna have pure black tones in my image, this is really bad, okay? And the same thing if you have, like, you know, white tones in your image. When you click on this triangle here, you'll see that the red stuff is basically clipped. It's pure white. There's no detail in that image, okay? So you want to avoid this. Double click here to reset it to middle. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that the image is punchy, but it's not muddy, okay? So, you know, you can actually pump it up a little bit with the brightness here, make it a bit more cheerful, and click boom. So you just get a bit more bright. So always watch your histogram, okay? Always watch your histogram. This is really important, yeah? You want to be on the money with this, all right? So I oftentimes see, you know, renders, you know, kind of either dark like this or kind of dull, really dull, you know, like really kind of muddy like that. Don't do that, because, you know, people gonna judge you based on your renders, and when they're gonna come to your website, they will see, first thing they will see on ArtStation is the render, and they will judge your skills based on your renders, okay? So rendering is something that you should be paying a lot of attention to, and in my opinion, rendering is either equally or even more important than modeling, because you can make even a cube look really good if you know what you're doing with lights, reflections, and composition, okay? So that's it for this one. Make sure you're gonna watch the decal bonus part, in which I'm gonna be using decals, and we're gonna be using actually paid add-ons to edit this image, like for example Infinite Color, or, you know, Nik Collection Filter, which is something I'm using quite a lot. So, you know, in this video I showed you how to do it in vanilla Photoshop, but I want to also emphasize that, you know, add-ons are important for Photoshop, and you could, you know, create some really cool stuff with them too. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this vid and the course, and I'll see you in the next one.